So please tell me, what is your name and how did you come to know about the Philippines?
My name is Louis Wolf. I live here in Washington, D.C., but I lived in the Philippines from 1967 to 1972, at which time I was deported by Ferdinand Marcos under instruction from the U.S. Embassy, and that was because of my work there at that time.
And what work were you doing?
Well, I was involved in anti-war demonstrations in front of the U.S. Embassy, together with other Americans living in Manila. And I was also increasingly involved, though I was doing graduate studies at the University of the Philippines in College Laguna. I also got more involved in supporting the anti-war movement in the Philippines, and I would say the war, the ramifications in the Philippines of the U.S. war in Vietnam, because of the use of Clark Air Force Base and Subic Naval Base as the staging grounds for a lot of the bombing that was going on in Vietnam or on Vietnam. A lot of the aircraft were based at Clark Field, which was a massive U.S. Air Force base. I began to understand that, in fact, the U.S. was deeply involved in the Philippines. I knew it before then, but I realized that the U.S. was supporting a military dictatorship under Ferdinand Marcos, including in counterinsurgency operations and training at Clark and at Subic. And I began to realize that what the U.S. was doing in Vietnam also had extensions in the Philippines.
And how did the United States come to be involved in the Philippines?
Well, that dates back to 1898, during the Spanish-American War, and in 1902, the United States negotiated, or I should say imposed, it was not a negotiation, a series of 3 treaties with the Philippines then, a so-called mutual defense treaty. I've never understood what was mutual about it, and the U.S. military bases agreement, U.S. military bases agreement. And the third was also an economic control over the Philippines, which made it a colony of the United States. The United States occupied the Philippines from that time forward until, I would say, today.
And when you say that the United States was supporting Ferdinand Marcos, could you give more detail on how you know that?
Well, we should go back first to say that every president since the 1960s was put in place by the United States, was chosen by the United States. That goes back to Diosdado Macapagal and successive presidents up until today. Ramon Magsaysay was known to have very close relations with the U.S. and in particular, I would say, the CIA at that time. He was portrayed as a democratic leader, but he was really put in place by the United States. And when Ferdinand Marcos was put in place by the United States, it was an election, but it was like many elections, a false election. The vote count was manipulated, and he became pretty quickly a dictator by any standard. He was known for the fact that he claimed that he was the most, in quotes, he called himself, quote, the most decorated war hero in the Philippines. That was during the Second World War. Well, the U.S. Army documents showed that, and they said that was absurd and fraudulent. But his claims to that, he was nothing less than a puppet of the United States. But as time went on, he became more interested in amassing power and amassing money and the riches of the Philippines. Some of the most interesting parts of this go back to some of the Japanese, the gold that the Japanese also, which was also involved in an occupational role in the Philippines. The gold that they had, the Japanese had obtained. When Marcos was overthrown, I should say in 1986, through a popular movement, because he'd become extremely unpopular, he, as a result of a rigged election, in a snap election that happened in 1986, the election was again fraudulent. The votes were miscounted or were manipulated. There was widespread demonstrations against him, and in fact there were mass. I should mention that what partly led to the overthrow of Marcos, in addition to the popular outrage and mass demonstrations, was the fact that Ronald Reagan and Senator Paul Laxalt made it known, and this was quoted widely in the media at the time, there must be a clean cut, meaning they were saying to Marcos, you're out of here. Your days are over, and you have no choice but to leave. And he escaped because there were efforts to assassinate him, including by the military and by some of his former allies and political allies were plotting to assassinate him. And finally, he accepted reluctantly to leave the country. But as I said, walking away with many steamer trunks filled with gold.
Did the United States, what was the United States' do you think the United States had any part in the assassination of Ninoy Aquino?
Ninoy Aquino, in fact, it must be stated that Aquino was picked as other presidents. He was a presidential candidate picked by the United States. He was very popular, but, and I say but, he also had ties, which I knew about when I was there, because once I was invited by Aquino, together with a number of other journalists and others, to his estate in central Luzon, near Angeles City, which is where Clark Air Force Base is. And as I was being driven into it was a golf course, but there were these strange hillsides, which were constructed in a way that was part of the golf course. And I looked over and I asked the driver, what are those? And he said, so he said, well, that's where the weapons are. And these weapons which Aquino had collected, amassed, and he had some relationships rather strong with this group. So he was a candidate to replace Marcos because the CIA, as it often does, in fact, routinely, when they realize that time is running short, that they can keep somebody in power, they decide who are we going to put in place next. And that was Aquino. Aquino returned from abroad on an aircraft, and as he was walking down the gangplank, he was shot from sharpshooters, which were Marcos supporters, Marcos military, and he was assassinated. So then his wife, his widow, Corazon Aquino, was chosen as the president to follow him. At first she was very popular because she was still grieving at the loss of her husband, but she became unpopular because of not only her ties to her husband and all that represented, but she became increasingly corrupt herself.
Okay, so with Duterte, do you know anything? I know you said you're not as involved in the more recent times, but do you know anything about Duterte, his connections to the CIA, to other organizations?
Well, I think it's fair to say that Rodrigo Duterte has, by his own proud acknowledgments, has a fascist tendency, that's where his identity is. And that's not an exaggeration, that's in fact. He has underseen the assassination of over 30,000 people now in the Philippines. This is well documented, he's proud of it, he's on record saying, I'm going to keep killing. I'm going to oversee. He doesn't pull the trigger himself, but he's got death squads, people that are, and military and police squads working day and night, going out killing people. The claim is Rodrigo Duterte, I'm asserting today, I think it's clear from all evidence, though I don't have documents proving it, that he was put in place like his predecessors by the Central Intelligence Agency. He's not a politician. He has no background as a political leader of any kind. He came from nowhere. And from the get-go, from the moment he came in power, he was extremely unpopular. But his way of dealing with the Filipino people was through the barrel of the gun. And he has launched what are well known as death squads, both military, Philippine military, as well as Philippine police, as well as private armies that engage on a day and night basis in wholesale killing. By his own statements, he's proud to say 30,000 people I've had to order their killing because they're involved in the drug trade. There may be some, and I'm not suggesting there aren't, that might be involved in drug-related operations, but it's widely known in the Philippines that most of them are people who are dissidents, who are people who are fighting against him. Just last week in Manila, there were thousands of people in the streets calling for his ouster, for his overthrow. And I think his days are numbered in power. But let's not forget that number 45, our so-called president, visited him just 10 days ago in Manila and on his Asian tour. And they toasted each other, and it was and he called him my friend, Trump called him my friend. I think they actually, not more than, they embraced. That's what I've heard in the news, that they're two of a kind. Luckily, at this point, Trump has not launched those kinds of operations against us, but all of his rhetoric seems to agree with that of Duterte. And I think I can't provide proof today that he's a CIA chosen candidate, but he came from nowhere. He had no reason to be there.
Please tell me about Joint Special Operations Command, JSOC, and then say that word before.
Well, the Joint Special Operations Command, which has really come into being in the period since Marcos was in power. But while I was there, it was obviously there were thousands of U.S. military in uniform and some not in uniform in the Philippines, based in the Philippines, at Clark and Subic, Clark Air Force Base and Subic Naval Base. There was a National Security Agency, NSA installation at Clark as well. So they're civilians, supposedly, so they have military affiliation. I think it's only fair to point out that historically, as I tried to say, going back to the beginning of the last century, the military ties of the U.S. to the Philippines, which were imposed, as I said, there was no mutual aspect to the mutual defense. by the U.S. Congress back at the beginning of the century.
If it wasn't mutual, why did the Philippines capitulate?
I don't think it's an exaggeration to say they had no choice at the time. It was during the Spanish-American War, and the United States saw the Philippines as a strategic area for the United States. As well, early on, they knew that the Philippines had major mineral resources, gold and silver and other minerals that were being mined. To this day, there is a company in the Philippines called the Benguet Gold Mining Company. That's a U.S.-owned corporation, and they've taken a lot of gold out of the Philippines. So, it's only logical that relationship, which was imposed back in 100 plus years ago, has continued to today. It is not in a formal sense an occupied country, but that's in reality what it is. It's called empire.
And can you, and please answer by saying my question within your answer. What would again, why is the Philippines capitulating? What is the threat? What is the actual threat to them? Like, will the U.S. bomb them? What will the U.S. do to the Philippines if they don't cooperate? And please say the whole, and forget I said what I said.
Well, your question as to what the United States would impose, or what are the conditions of the relationship. When I was in the Philippines, and I was in and out of Clark Air Force Base as a civilian, because I helped to do an anti-war newspaper called The Whig, the Whig part of the United States. So I was going in and out of the base with help from my friends in the military who were producing this paper. And they pointed out part of the installation there, and they said, there are weapons there. I said, oh, really? This is not known or acknowledged or admitted by either side, by the U.S. or the Philippines, that there were nuclear weapons. There were also a vast weapons storage at the base, non-nuclear weapons, which if it ever had an accident there.
So you were telling me about Clark Air Force Base.
Clark Air Force Base, thanks to an act of God, is no longer existing because there was a volcano explosion, and the what is it called? It explodes from the volcano exploded and completely wiped out the base. There was ankle, or I should say knee deep in volcano dust, and they had to evacuate. Some hundreds of people were affected by it, including some deaths of both Filipinos and American service people. And so that base is closed now. It's been turned into, oddly enough, into a shopping center. I think that the weapons were removed, those ordnance and all that, open was, as well as the nuclear weapons, but that land is still a poisoned land. When I was there, the Air Force military police, Air Force police, were actually involved in a death squad operation right on the base. Some friends of mine were in the labor movement, they were workers on the base. Member of their cadre were taken up into these watchtowers, 40 and 50 feet high, where they were tortured and pushed out to their death. That was published in the newspaper at the time. Likewise, and there was a group which we helped to expose in the week called the Red Patches. We knew about that because we were the seamstress who made these patches that they would wear when they were involved in these operations. Anyway, the point is that the U.S. left a very terrible embassy there in Angeles City. I shouldn't fail to say that hundreds, I don't know how many hundreds, of women were exploited there for sex. I remember seeing the blue Air Force buses driving onto the base full of these women to service, I hate to use that word, to service the military, not just in the bars outside, but inside the base. And then they had a medical facility there so that the women could be treated for diseases. This was the nature of our relationship with the Philippines, that they would carry on that kind of operation.
Were the women paid or captured?
They were paid by the Air Force personnel.
And was their poverty such that women felt they had no other option?
Many of them, their families had jobs on the Air Force base at Clark. And this was also the case in Subic Naval Base, which was 100 some miles away. Also, obviously that was not part of any treaty. That was just ongoing. Anywhere the U.S. military is around this globe, this is what happens. Prostitution, which was never there before, becomes endemic, becomes central to keeping the military personnel happy, if you will.
And how do you think this occupation of the Philippines affects American citizens who aren't there? What is the effect of this kind of policy of occupation? Does that affect people who live within the United States?
Well, clearly, just the very fact that we're using another country as a base of our operations affects us because of our military budget, which in large part is to support our bases around the world. If you're aware, there are over 1,000 U.S. bases around the globe at this point in time. Popular it's actually over 1,000. Almost on a daily basis, there's a new one opening up wherever the United States is involved in the war, whether it's official or otherwise. All the wars, even today, in 2017, are undeclared war. The Vietnam War is not a declared war. Under the government of Barack Obama, this is not Trump, the Pentagon created something called the Africa Command, or AFRICOM, AFRICOM, which officially is based in Stuttgart, Germany, but in fact it's based in Djibouti, in Africa. And they have bases strewn throughout Africa now. At the beginning it was only in Djibouti. And now they have bases, and I'll just read this list, in Algeria, Angola, Benin, Botswana, Burkina Faso, Burundi, Cameroon, the Cape Verde Islands, going on to Senegal, Seychelles, Togo, Tanzania, Uganda, and Zambia. And from east to west and north to south in Africa, they're even trying to, in addition to all the countries I've mentioned, these bases are not just bases as such. There's base construction, security cooperation agreements, engagements, training exercises, advisory, or so-called advisors, deployments, special operations missions, and a growing logistics network, all of them showing the inexplicable evidence of the spread, the scope of the Africa Command. The part of the operations are involving the wars, the undeclared wars in the Middle East. For example, drones are deployed from Africa now, some of them. And where the bombing operations that are undertaken throughout the Middle East now, in 7 countries, which are killing hundreds of people, innocent people, women and children.
So they're not, so be clear on that. Are the drones killing terrorists, or who are they really killing? What's really going on?
Officially, the Pentagon always says we killed this person, this Al-Qaeda person, that person. But in every single case, though they won't admit it publicly, they say in what is called collateral damage. We minimize that. They acknowledge there is, quote, the ugly term collateral damage, but the collateral damage means collateral death. And it's always involving people who have no military function whatsoever, men, women, and children, elderly people. And now it's known to be hundreds of people who died in this way from drones, many of them coming from Africa.
And do you think that has an effect on the number of terrorists in the world?
It's the best recruitment that any terrorist organization could ever wish for. That we recruit for them by these operations. Yes, that's what it's all about.
So the anti-terrorism program is creating more terrorists.
I remember under Ronald Reagan talking about terrorism, and well, at that time it was in Latin America, in Guatemala, which is drenched with blood of people, in Nicaragua and El Salvador, and more recently than that in Honduras, which is in the news today. And so I would say that they always use the word terrorism, but they're creating a lot of terrorism. There is now evidence that the United States had a role in the creation of Al-Qaeda. Hello? This is supposed to be the major terrorist organization on the globe today. Well, why did the United States consider its role to create something like Al-Qaeda, which is launching all kinds of operations to what we believe? I'm prepared to say here today that I think the U.S. is involved with Al-Qaeda on an ongoing operational level. It's not just them doing it, Al-Qaeda doing it, whatever they're doing, but we are directing and supporting and arming and funding a lot of what they do. You should understand, whenever they hear the term national security, it's a lie, it's a massive lie. National security in practice means national security of national corporations, U.S. corporations, that the U.S., whether it's a military base, whether it's the CIA, whether it's the NSA in various countries around the world, they're doing it to support those corporations, the interests of those corporations, the massive profits that they're making, the extraction of minerals, all of that, and oil. You remember the phrase, what is our oil doing under their sand? Well, yes, it's their sand, but it's not our oil. And it's only fair to say that the American people have been deceived since World War II about our role in the world. Every president in my lifetime, in your lifetimes, says the magic words: the United States is the greatest nation on the face of the earth. Well, that leaves out 192 other countries. Are they sliced bread, sliced cheese, or what? And the idea of American exceptionalism, which Obama said again and again, we are exceptional. We, the United States, are exceptional. How dare him to say that? That's why, you remember after 9/11, which I would point out is much more than the official story, the question all over the news was, why do they hate us? Is it any wonder that they hate us after what we do to them? I say no.
And what would you say to liberals who, because Obama was the first black president, because he spoke eloquently, because he championed some liberal causes, they gave him a free pass on that, on the imperialism and the war? What would you say to them?
Well, I voted for Obama once, and I realized what was going on. I was very happy that we had our first person of color in the White House. But we began to realize what was going on, that he was the president, he was the commander-in-chief, but there were people higher than him and forces higher than him. In fact, I will tell you that while Obama was president, I don't know now under this president, when Obama was president, there were levels of secrecy, 7 levels above top secret. What does that say? That even top secret was not secret enough. There were things that he didn't know, wasn't allowed to know. So why is it that in the so-called defense of national security that this kind of deception can go on? And our Congress is very complicit in this. There are generally only 6 or 8 people in the Congress that are allowed to know a lot of what the CIA is doing, and they're only told part of what they're doing. And the same goes for the national security issues and so forth. So I would say that Edward Snowden and Chelsea Manning are both national heroes for what they have done to help educate the people. But it's going to take more than a whistleblower or whistleblowers. I hope there will be more whistleblowers like them. Indeed, Daniel Ellsberg is calling for people who are now in government to come out and to tell us what they know.
And the top secret security level that's above the president, who has that?
Some of them we know their names, most of them we don't. There's certainly a few of them are members of Congress, the chairmen and women, not very women, mostly men, are chair of the intelligence committees, the 2 House and the Senate committees, and the Armed Services Committee. They have access to that, but even their members of their committees don't, for the most part, know the totality. They may know little bits and pieces of it, but they don't know the overall picture.
And one final question, do you think that the CIA, because of it, and NSA together, because of their vast access to information about all these political figures and some of the things they have done that are not things that they want the public to know, do you think that they use this power to blackmail them to be quiet about these things?
Well, that's certainly what J. Edgar Hoover did for many years. He was in power at the FBI for 49 years, I think it was, until he died. He would still be there if he were still living. And that was his role, because he had folders and file cabinets full of secrets on most every member of Congress. You can imagine that has an effect on a daily level in what they do and what they don't do, and what they say and what they don't say. I think the American people should understand that the official story of every major event in our history, he would probably still be the director in his old age. And people like him have massive power in this country. It's supposed to be a civilian government, yes, and Hoover was a civilian, but the military, the role of the military is now more than ever. The militarization of our policies, whether abroad or in this country, the militarization of the police in this country, the role of the military in writing legislation, you name it. The military is now all-powerful in many ways, even though it's called a civilian government.